even huge artists will tell you, we were talking before, like you crunch the numbers on like a Bad Bunny song with 1 billion plays. And like, what did he make? $3 or $4 million off it? Like, that's a lot of money, but like, you're like one of the biggest artists on the planet, and like you're making way less money than people used to make in the 90s as one-hit wonders, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a publicist. Yeah, just keep buying publicity because that's what you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what you need. You need publicity to get your music heard by people who are not immediately around you.
Artists, producers, instrumentalists, and creatives, talking to musicians of all kinds. This is a conversation with Scott Nicastro, a singer, songwriter, guitarist, and studio owner that has been part of countless bands and has experience touring the nation. He's also experienced the changes in the music industry following its advancements in technology and its dysfunctional business side, giving him a unique perspective on what works and what doesn't. This is the Hear That Music podcast. To support us, leave a like, comment, and share this with anyone who may like it or it may help. Subscribe if you'd like to hear more, or join our newsletter at hearthatmusic.com. We're just going to start right off, right? Can you talk about the experience of touring the country with your band in 2007 and what lessons did you learn from that experience that still apply to your career today?
It's I don't know, it's a really cool experience, and the longer you go on tour for, like in one single, you know, sitting, I feel like you learn different things. You know, when you go away for a weekend, it's always like it's just like a party, and it's like it's very fun. You're away for, you know, 3 or 4 days. You know, but once you get into like, you know, a few weeks and you're away from home and you're homesick, like, I don't know, it's like your performance is like it's basically like it's the big thing you have to do that day, right? Like it's like that's like the part of your day that's work, and you know the 500-mile drive to get to the next town is like your commute, you know. And all those times are always so much fun because you're just like in the van with your friends and you're, you know, just chit-chatting, you get to know people better, and you know, there's so many funny stories you'll have, and just like, you know, dumb little moments with like your friends in a van, like stupid jokes and people farting and like, you know, stuff like that, like silly things. But then you get to like your show, and it's like, it kind of, I think it like helps you to realize that your performance, you know, it's your work, you know what I mean? That's like the culmination of all of the work. It's like that performance, like going to a new town, meeting new people, and you know, trying to present like the best version of your band possible, you know, and like performing the best you can, and, you know, making sure you sound good. And like, your band never sounds better than they do after like the first 3 or 4 days on tour. You know, the first 3 or 4 days are like, you're getting used to it. And then by like the second week, like you guys have never been tighter, you know, like everybody's tweaked their like volumes to just be like the perfect mix. And you're just so in the zone. Like, honestly, it's like, it's I don't know. It's a fun experience. Like for anybody who, you know, who's done it, like knows how challenging and rewarding it is. But it's also just so much fun.
Yeah. But earlier you said that you bought a van, and you asked your parents for that money to buy a van. But
yeah, I started when I was a kid.
You also said that if you knew what you knew now, that you would have used that money on something else. Can you explain that?
Oh, for sure. And I mean, and what I was saying before is like, it's more because, and it's like what I was just saying at the beginning of that was like how like looking back, like my opinion now is informed by my experience then, is that like we spent so much time and money at the time, you know, in 2002 to 2007, like you spent like so much time and money, you know, focusing on touring, because it was the way that we made money as a band to fund recording, and to keep our band going, and you know, because you could sell merch and, you know, you get paid for the shows, which, you know, any musician will probably tell you, like local shows, oftentimes it's like, you know, it's you and your friends. It's like, you know, you're probably not making money, and it doesn't matter because you're just having fun with your friends, you know, a couple towns over or whatever. But what we didn't know then was how like the music industry would change. You know, like I had said before, it's like, you know, when I was a kid and I started playing guitar, like, and I'm like 10 years old, you know, I'm just like, I'm going to get a guitar and I'm going to write a song and it's going to be awesome. And, you know, we're going to play shows and people are going to like it and we'll just keep going and going and going. And eventually, like, all this hard work's going to pay off. And, like, you know, somebody's going to be like, wow, that band like really worked hard. They had such like a good like DIY ethic and, you know, they toured so much and they paid their dues. And, you know, and I was under this like assumption that like you just work hard and you pay your dues and you do the best you can. And like, you know, and you could play music for your whole life. And then there's like a couple things like when you look back that like, if you had known then you would have done differently. You know, if I knew that in 2007, how like streaming would take over as like the primary consumption like of music would be, you know, through streaming. Like if I knew that was going to happen, you know, and if I knew that with the advent of internet blogs, you know, like at the time it's like there was a lot of the biggest, you know, music blogs that we know of now, they were still in their infancy and, you know, they were reviewing music like earnestly and like and giving their opinions, and it was great and it was entertaining and it was this new thing, you know, and like YouTube wasn't, you know, I mean YouTube existed, but you know, you're watching like funny videos and like, you know, bands could put out a music video on that, and that was certainly like opening the door to allow underground music to kind of be accessible all across the planet, and everybody was doing that. But what ended up happening was like as corporations, you know, realized that like where the music industry was going, whether they were guiding it or not, like once they realized like, oh, we're going to move to streaming and like, you know, and there's going to be less money to be made in music. It's like a lot of those blogs, right? Like eventually they all got bought by large corporations. They're all, you know, subsidiaries of large, you know, like just media outlets, you know, Condé Nast. Like it's like, you know, it's like a big company, and you know, when they're controlling kind of like the consumption of music and guiding what people should like, I guess it's like if I had known, you know, what I was saying before is that if I had known then that like how important publicity and PR was, we would have shifted our focus. Like we wouldn't have like, if we knew that touring was going to become like, you know, and also nobody could see where like the price of gas was going to go and like inflation. And in my lifetime, there's been like how many economic disasters. And if I had known everything that was going to happen in the last 20 years, you know, like we could have taken our resources and like redirected it towards publicity and, you know, and done the whole pay to play thing, which, you know, for better or for worse is what is the industry now. It's, you know, you pay to, you know, for people to have access to you, or to even know that you exist, and, you know, whatever, that's fine. But if we had known it then, like we might not have bought a new van, right? Or like spent all that time and money just, you know, touring endlessly. I mean, we toured nonstop. Like we'd go out for a month, we'd come home for a month, we'd go back for a month. And, you know, these things ultimately broke up, you know, several bands I was in. Like touring is hard. It's not easy. It's not emotionally easy. It's not financially easy. And, you know, you're kind of like, when you look back, you're like, was I like laboring under like a false premise that like just being there and doing it would be enough for me to keep doing it? Obviously, I still make music because like, you know, what I learned from that, you know, is that it's like, I would just want to make music. Like, you know, I whether or not I make money in music doesn't really matter. It's like, I'm still just going to make it. So yeah, I mean, like, I don't think anybody saw it coming though, right? Like nobody knew that like in 15 years people weren't going to be buying, like it never crossed my mind that people would stop buying CDs.
Yeah.
Like you didn't know that like even though iPods were out, you're just like, oh, it's just another way to listen to music. And I think we probably all like snubbed our noses a little bit at it anyway, because we're like, it's lesser quality, you know? And it is. I mean, so yeah.
So streaming, the thing about streaming is that even if an artist gets a publicist sometimes, like we were talking about earlier, they might not even get to the platforms that they want, right? And they might not even get the listens that they want because their music isn't as good as it actually needs to be. to attract the fan base that they're looking for. But then again, the publicist may not even be able to get your music on to the platform that you like Pitchfork. You
Right.
talked about that. Can you explain that a little more?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like, you know, I mean, I'm like, I guess I'm reluctant to call it gatekeeping.
Call it what it is.
You know, because like I don't want to.
What it is.
I don't wanna,
Money can be a gatekeeper.
I don't want to prevent myself from, you know, working with any like publicists or anything, because they are necessary and they always have been. I don't mean to like make it sound like, publicists are only now as important as they are. They always were, but the consumption of art and entertainment, and music, like that consumption, like it used to just be different. It was like there was only so many publications. The radio was a big part of it. Going around and touring was a huge part of it. Like all that stuff. The thing is that like, when I said that like, had I known in 2007, like where it was going to go, like maybe I would like approach it differently. That wouldn't have been true 15 years prior to that, like in 1990, it certainly wouldn't have been, it was so far off from being that, you're like a victim of when you're born, or I don't mean to call it a victim, but like you're born when you're born. So if you're 18 years old in 1990, like, and you want to be a musician, I mean, you could just make interesting music, and record labels were just throwing money. There were more people who could be self-made, or there were more people who could, like you had an easier chance, or or at least it seems like you had an easier chance of like being randomly discovered. Like you hear all kinds of like stories, whether they're true or not, you probably never know, of like just somebody playing a song in a coffee shop, and like somebody hears it, and it's like they, somehow it snowballs and they're like on the radio. And it's like, it was a different time, and there was a lot more money in album sales, and labels were just making, they could take bigger risks. They had larger amounts of money to take those risks with. They could pay artists just to sign with them. I don't know. No one's ever offered me a contract now, but I would venture to say it's like, it's very unlikely that a band just gets paid up front before they even record their first record to just sign with the label. A lot of times now people like make the record they want to make, and then they shop it to labels, and a label goes, yeah, like, we'll put that out. And you've already done all the stuff that, a label in the 90s would have been helping you do. So yeah, like I don't want to diminish what like PR is, because it's always been a part of music. Every label's always had a marketing department. They've always had publicists. They've always worked with outside publicists. It just feels that nowadays that like there's such a competition for your attention online, and that's the primary way that people consume everything, that it just feels like in order to be promoted or recognized or seen online in a meaningful way, and when I say meaningful, in a way that, means that like enough people will hear what you do or hear of you, that, your song can get a lot of streams or whatever. Like, in order to get to that point, you do have to pay. Like you have to. It's like, I don't, and it's not to diminish publicists like as like our profession or like them personally, because it's not their fault. It's just the way it is. It's just like, you cannot, like, Pitchfork is not going to review you if you don't have a publicist, and it's not cheap. And like I said before, in the last 20 years, there's been a lot of economic downturns, and like, wealth inequality is massive in our country. I mean, around the world. I mean, wealth inequality is insane. It's like all the money is very much at the top, and those people's children, like, and their children's friends and like those people get first crack at all the opportunities across all of the industries. It's like finance, music, any of the arts, like it doesn't matter. Like if, if your dad went to Yale, like you have a very large, it's a very large possibility that you can just get into Yale just on like the alumni quota alone. And then when you're at Yale, you can meet all the other children of people who went to Yale. Like these are your friends, and like, what do you do with your friends? Like we all bring our friends up with us when we like, if we have an opportunity that we take advantage of, if I can help my friend, I'm always going to help my friend. Mm-hmm. So like, I feel like in the music business, it really helps to have like rich and influential friends. And I feel like a lot of times, without saying anybody's names, I mean, like, so many musicians really are just, they're very, they're privileged people. And it's like, it's not their fault that they're privileged, like you're a victim of how you're born. Like, you're born privileged, like that's fine. But I guess I have in the last like 15 years, I've definitely developed like some kind of resentment towards the idea of like people not admitting or like pretending like they're where they are based on merit and not, like nepotism or their circumstances, because it might be inspiring to like a 15-year-old kid. Like when I was 15, like I just thought it was just hard work. And it's like, and to find out, as an adult that that's not the primary driving force of success in music. Had I known it then, I just would have, all the begging, like your parents, like, can I have money for a van? Like, can you like help me like do this and that, like all the money that you ask your parents for. And I was fortunate enough to have parents who had enough money to like, buy me guitars. If your parents can afford to like buy you a guitar, it's like you're definitely not going to make it in music, right? Like it's not a cheap passion to have, for sure.
Yeah. So if talent doesn't really get you into the music industry and the publicists can't do the job that they're hired to do, then what do you think artists should be spending their money on, especially given that social media is such a big part of the industry now?
It's very, very hard to have a full-time job to support yourself in 2023 Earth, especially in America. And like, it's hard to have to compete, in the labor market and then also pursue your passions on the side, thinking that, just doing the best you can is going to be good enough. Because oftentimes it's subjective art, right? Like oftentimes your song is probably better than a lot of songs that are on the radio as far as you're concerned and the people who are like you are concerned. And so, yeah, I think there's a cross section to that. And I do think that like the ultimate cheat code for succeeding in music in today's world is just hire a publicist, hire the best publicist you can afford and give them the most amount of money you can. And they'll get you're buying opportunities, every blog that writes about you is an opportunity, and the only way you can capitalize on that is by having a good song. It's if your song's good and a blog puts it out and their readers see it, then like theoretically you should have fans and listeners, so, but if your goal is to make money in music, I mean, I think, there's enough information out there that, even huge artists will tell you. We were talking before, like you crunch the numbers on like a Bad Bunny song with 1 billion plays. And like, what did he make? $3 or $4 million off it? Like, that's a lot of money, but like, you're like one of the biggest artists on the planet. And like, you're making way less money than people used to make in the 90s as one-hit wonders,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a publicist. Yeah. Just keep buying publicity because that's what you want, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what you need. You need publicity to get your music heard by people who are not immediately around you. Like I can show you my song today. I can show you all my music. Like we can just listen to it and like I got it to you. And anybody who comes in contact with me, I can share my music with. I don't know that many people, so it's like I don't know enough people to just like show my music to be like, oh, now like have like 10,000 plays. So you need publicity. You absolutely need it. And if you're on a label, they're going to help you with that. They're going to take care of that's going to be a large portion of what they do is going to be funding publicity, because the more people who hear your record, the more people who buy it, and that's how a label makes money. It's like it's a simple equation. It's just that labels don't have the money they used to take risks. Money's not as easy to borrow as it used to be. And again, I think a lot of that is tied to wealth inequality. It's like, you could in the 80s, like it would have been a lot easier for you to, to take out a loan at a bank and start a record label with your friends than it would be now. Like if you go into try to go to Bank of America or Chase Bank right now and be like, I need $100,000 to open up a label to put out one record. I want to press 50,000 copies of this record and pay the top publicity company to get it onto one blog. It's going to cost you like $100,000. And it's like, no bank is going to give you the money. They'll give you the money if you're rich already. If you come from wealth and you already have money and you have collateral and like you have good credit and you want to take out a business loan. Yeah. But if you're just an average person in the world, that's who you're competing with. You're competing and you're competing with people, like I said before, who like are disingenuous about who they are. That's like, I don't think they have to come out and be like, so everybody knows, like, my father was so-and-so and, I have this much in my trust fund, so like I can keep this up a long time. You know how many people I know, like the best musicians I know, some of the best songwriters that I've ever seen, people who I've played with, like, at other bands at shows like my entire life, like so many people, you just get to a certain age and you can't swing it. You can't justify it. You still have your life, like, right? Like everybody, the whole point of work, or should be, right, is to like have some kind of nice work balance where it's like, your work is rewarding. You make enough money to have the things that you want or need. And then in your free time, you get to you start a family or enjoy your time with your friends. And like, at some point, if you're not making money in music, like you do have to just get a job. Like, because what if you don't have money, if you don't have a trust fund, what else are you supposed to do? Like, it's like we live in a country that like requires us to make money to survive. Where we live is very expensive. Most cities are very expensive. I don't know how you live in New York City and pursue music on a daily basis without having, some kind of financial help. It's, you can't do it during the day without having, how can you work on music during the day unless you have a night job, so yeah, just spend your money on publicity. It's the best shot you have nowadays. Cause like, I just don't think touring's practical, right? Like how much gas are you willing to burn and how much time are you willing to take off of work? It was easier when I was 19 and I could like go to my retail job and say like, I need 2 weeks off. And they go, oh, you can't do that. And I go like, I quit. Because I'm 19, I live at home, and like, I'll just get another retail job. Yeah. That's very easy to do. 30-year-old people with families and bills, like, that's not practical. It's, I think you just have to be smart about, like, if you're going to spend money in music, I think, you just have to prioritize. Do you want a great sounding record? Like, okay, then you have to spend money on a studio. And if you want that record to reach people, you have to spend money on PR. It's like, there's no other way around it. Like, otherwise, you're going to do the work of a publicist, which is a person who gets paid a salary, right? Like, you're going to do their job for yourself. So either like you're going to be your own publicist and it's going to be a full-time job, or you're going to hire somebody as their full-time job to do it for you. So.
Yeah, slippery slope. It
sounds dystopian, or it sounds like depressing to a degree. I don't mean to like make it sound discouraging, It's like,
it's what's real. It's not easy to make it in the music industry, especially with the intersection between music and technology and how those are changing, because people can't see the future and people can't see how advancements in technology are going to change the way music is produced and distributed and even consumed, and what implications these have for the industry. But in that sense, like, to succeed, some people I don't want to say need to be able to see the future, because that's impossible, but they need to be able to see what's coming. So how are artists supposed to be able to see what's coming and what they should be focused on?
I think that if, if music is something that, or any art form, because I do think that the same thing kind of like applies to, to filmmakers, right? Like, the film industry is way different, it's way different. Like, again, to like go back to like, you know, and I only go back to the 90s and early 2000s because that's really before, I would say about 2006 is really when like internet blogs and, you know, really started to take off. And not just internet blogs. I mean, you had other things going on at the same time. Like when I signed up for, without, you know, dating myself too much, it's like when I signed up for Netflix, there was no streaming. You know, it was a DVD rental company, and you know, and they sent you the DVDs at home. And nobody saw what that was going to become. I signed up for Netflix because in order to get a discount on some other service online, it was like, sign up for a free trial of one of these offers and like you'll get like a discount on your order today. Yeah. I signed up for Netflix. I ended up thinking it was really cool and I liked it and I kept it. And Netflix changed the way that the movie industry was, you know, in the same way that labels don't take, you know, large financial risks on a ton of bands. Movie studios also don't take a ton of risk on like low budget indie films. You know, everything's either a major budget or it's out of your pocket as a filmmaker on a much like smaller level, you know? And I think that nobody in film saw that coming, certainly. And I think that the only way you can really be prepared, it's sort of like we were talking about with being able to recognize an opportunity when it arises, is just like trying to have a level of awareness, you know, and at least have the awareness to remind yourself to try to be more aware. At the very least, you know, if you can't actually be aware of what's going on, you just try to take a moment to be like, what's going on? You know, because in 1999, you could have said, oh, like Napster, LimeWire, like, you know, it was obvious that MP3s were going to be a popular, you know, form of consuming music, you know, for file sharing on the internet. They're substantially smaller than Wave. So you can reject things that are new, or when something new pops up, you know, and is fresh and it's the first time you're hearing about it, just like be more aware. Just like just take a moment to be like, even if you think like, oh, this is so dumb, like this is dumb, you know, like a lot of people like obviously thought that Napster and all that was dumb. You know, a lot of people were like, this is crazy. Like this is going to destroy the music business. This is, and it did. But it wasn't dumb. You know, it did allow for a lot of people who otherwise would just never have their songs heard just to be heard. So I think that to predict, you can't predict the future, but if you just try to be more aware of what's going on in the present, I think you won't be so blindsided by the future. I think that's the best you could do. You can't predict it, but like you just don't want to be blindsided by it, where all of a sudden, which is kind of like, to go back to your first question, is kind of how I feel when I look back at like, oh, damn, I didn't see what was coming when blogs were on the rise. I thought they were stupid. I thought that Pitchfork was stupid. It still is very stupid, but like I thought it was super stupid. Like Pitchfork's like the worst thing ever, right? It's corporate like shit, and it's like, and it's stupid. And it was, but at the time, it's just like, oh, like as a musician, like you thought it was stupid because you're like, oh, I don't want to get panned by Pitchfork. Because getting panned by Pitchfork was terrible. But nobody realized at the time that like even a bad review on Pitchfork is better than no review. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like getting a bad review on Pitchfork, I'd fucking welcome it. If Pitchfork's watching, feel free to give me a 0.0, 0.1. Like just listen to it and like tell everybody how terrible I am.
I'll take at least a 5.
A 5 would be nice.
Give me a 5.
Five's not bad. Yeah.
Out of like 10. I'm not asking for a 5 out of 5.
I had a publicist friend who said something funny once about like, somebody they were working with, I think was working on a song or something called like Worst New Music, as like just like a drag on Pitchfork, which is just so fantastic. And yeah, when she told me about that, I just thought it was so funny. I'm like, because it can make or break you, but it can also do nothing. You know what I mean? Like there's so many times that like, I'm sure that if you looked at the numbers, like I don't think that getting a best new music on Pitchfork really even, personally, I think the majority of people who read Pitchfork are other musicians and like aspiring musicians. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that the person who's just like playing your song on repeat on Spotify because they heard it on a playlist is even reading Pitchfork. Yeah. Like Pitchfork feels very much like it's for people of a certain age. Like I don't think...
Yeah, or music enthusiasts. Like,
exactly, yeah. You're a music enthusiast and you're curious what your record that you like gets on. Like most of the time it's like, I'm just curious, like I don't read every new review of everything on Pitchfork. I just scroll down to see like, oh, I wonder what they said about this person, or like I wonder what they said about this. Like I hate that, I wonder what they said. Yeah. You know, you see a record that you didn't like when you heard it and then you see that Pitchfork gave it a great review, and you're like, oh yeah, let me like see what you're like almost like hate reading it, you know, like hate watching the news or something. And it's like, I mean, Pitchfork, obviously, if you get a great review on Pitchfork, it's good for you, but it's not the only part of your publicity campaign. You know, it's not like your PR company is just getting you on Pitchfork. Yeah. They're getting you on a bunch of other blogs because it's about you being on all of the blogs. You don't just want a good review on Pitchfork. You also want a good review in Rolling Stone and Spin and AllMusic. And you want like every aggregate you want in your favor. And more so now, and I didn't see this coming even when I finally dawned on me I should have a publicist, or I should like hire a publicist, and you know, and that I should have been doing this all along. At that point in time, I didn't realize how important it would be to be on a Spotify playlist, you know? And I don't think anybody even thought of how important that would be when Spotify was already taking off. You know, I didn't see that coming. I didn't see how like important it would be to just be on a playlist, because it really is. I've discovered I hate Spotify, right? Every musician despises them for how they treat artists. But I've come across so many great bands who are so small just because like their algorithm like predicts my taste in a way that I'm not comfortable with, but it does a great job sometimes. Like I'll just be listening to something, the record ends, and some new song comes on. I'm like, this is great. And I look it up and it's some small band from Canada or some small band from like the Midwest or wherever. They're from a big city and I've just never heard of them. And they don't have a lot of plays and their record is just beautiful. And you're just like, this is incredible. And like, you know, and as much as you want to hate on Spotify, like they do help, you know, get you heard. And so it, you know, your one question about, you know, like where do you put your resources? Like, I think it depends on your goals. Like, do you want to just be heard? Then put all your resources into like, you know, into Spotify, getting onto Spotify playlists, you know, by whatever means you can. Because I think that that's actually more effective now than getting a good review on Pitchfork, you know, because I mean, who are you competing with? Like Kanye West and Beyonce on Pitchfork? Like,
yeah,
you know, I mean, that's like they get great scores on their albums, and you're going up against their PR campaigns. You're fighting for space on the same places that they are. Like, I don't know that you really want to be on that playing field. And if you, or maybe you do.
I think people are also starting to realize that 1,000 loyal fans are better than, say, 50,000 nobody followers,
right,
that don't truly care about your music.
Right.
Because with 1,000 loyal fans, they say, I hate to bring up OnlyFans, but say like somebody used that type of platform as their like playbook, and they wanted to get their fans to contribute $10 a month or even $10 a year to their actual cause. Like, if you have 1,000 fans that can contribute $10,000 or $10 a year to your cause, that's more than most people are making on Spotify
100%.
In their entire music career.
100%. And that's like definitely, that's also one of those things that goes back to like, how do you predict the future? It's like, you know, having the awareness to see how those platforms work, you know, I mean, it's like Patreon, you know, and it's like, you know, whereas obviously like OnlyFans is, you know, geared towards, you know, certain industries more than others. Like Patreon, you know, is essentially the same thing. And I think there's a lot of people out there, like myself included, who like happily, you know, pay for some kind of exclusive access to my favorite musical artists. You know, obviously there's a cap to how many of your favorite artists, you know, depending on how diverse your taste in music is and how many artists you really love. You know, there's certainly, you know, a cap probably to how much you're willing to spend, like, you know, altogether. But I mean, to spend $10 a year to, you know, just get access to, you know, like behind the scenes kind of stuff, into like insights into like your favorite artists, you know, maybe demos of songs, you know, if you're buying their records, you know, I think that's a big thing too, is that, you know, we try to come up with these ways to kind of make money in music now, because it's hard, because you're on Spotify, it's hard to buy somebody's record. You know, you have to go out of your way to do it. You know, you want to do it, you want to support them. It's the most direct way to support an artist is to just actually buy their record, especially if they're an independent artist. If you have a Bandcamp and that's the way that you buy the records, or the artist made the records themselves, pressed them themselves, have it on CD, whatever it is, because people are consuming music digitally, it is very easy to not buy an artist album, especially when they're bigger, right? Like a bigger artist, you're like, are you really gonna am I really gonna, buy like I don't even know, take your pick of any like large artist, any large pop artist. Am I going to buy their album when like I already know they've got money, they don't really need it, and I can just listen to it with my monthly subscription? I'm probably not going to do that. The price of tickets, like I'm sure, look at the price of concert tickets lately for like large artists. It's out of control. It's not practical. I think it's classist. Like it's you're pricing some of your most loyal fans out because they might listen to your song 10,000 times on Spotify, but they can't afford $500 for a ticket, and so I think the music industry is really quite messy. I mean, I think all industries are really messy. Personally, like in a macro sense, I think like the world is a mess right now, and art is always been an escape. Art's always an escape for people, and it's always has been, and any way you can support your favorite artist is great. I think a membership model that like offers something extra special. I would happily pay an artist like $20 a year, and every time their record comes out, I get it for free. And like, I would love to like support them. But to be honest, it's like in such a competitive marketplace, like labor market, and just like financially, like where the world is and where most people are at. It's very hard for me to wanna buy records for people who are already succeeding. I hate to say that. It sounds like, like no offense to like the biggest like artist on earth, but I have a lot of friends who, it's hard for me to afford all of my friends who are struggling musicians to afford to buy all of their records. It's like, I know a lot of people who put out records. If I buy them all, it's like, it's hard, and you have your own challenges financially in life. Like, I'd love to say I buy every friend of mine, I buy their record, but I don't, because it's like, it does add up, and it's hard. It's a difficult world. And, I'm not saying art should be free, but, if you can support an artist, like you absolutely should, right? You should, whatever the most direct version is for that artist, it's the most you can do. That money, an artist can make, if you could get 100 like diehard fans who give you $100 or, give you $10 a year, like that goes a long way to just producing more music, and
even mental health.
Oh, for sure. But that's the thing, is like people need music, and that's why I'm so reticent to be like, buy everything you can, because it's like, I mean, songs help people, music helps people, art helps people. Like, it helps people so much. It helps their mental health so much. And in a world where it's so difficult to get by for the vast majority of people on earth, like, it's such a struggle to just exist for most people. Like, art is just, it's what people lean on, It's like when you comfort watch a show after a long, stressful day and you just binge watch like a show you've seen 10,000 times and fall asleep to it. It's like, it is comfort. Art is comforting. And so if you can give money to an artist to help them continue to make art, I just suggest giving it to the smallest artists that you like. 'Cause, Beyonce doesn't need your money. Like, she doesn't need the album sales. She probably doesn't really have the album sales. Like, if you looked at paid albums, obviously she makes money in music, right? But I would be curious to see what like her actual physical album sales are versus, say, a larger indie artist where their fan base wants like a vinyl and they want like physical stuff. I'd be curious to see, streaming is one thing. We talked about it before with like artists like Bad Bunny or Ed Sheeran, right? They're making a fortune on streaming. I don't think it's actually enough for how popular they are on there, but they're probably not selling actual records. Maybe they are. But like where are the record stores?
Yeah, exactly.
They're Target now. Target and Walmart. I mean, they, for better or for worse, like, I give like props to Target. Every time I go there, I see special editions of like Target exclusive records. I mean, they're like, they seem to be like you have very small stores that have managed to survive, and then you just have Walmart and Target selling records.
Yeah. Yeah, and most of those CD stores were also in malls, which are gone now.
Right. It's super fan. Like, I have Rihanna records like on vinyl. Like I have like big pop records that are relatively new on vinyl, which I love. Like Rihanna, the one Rihanna record I have, it's like the record Anti. Like, the packaging is so extra. It's amazing. I'm like, I happily paid more for that record than the average record because it's like, it's got like braille on it. It's got this like cool texture. Like, it's like those like those kind of rubbery like biodegradable straws. It's like kind of feels like that. It's like there's so much like detail and effort put into it.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that. Like, I've got like a weekend record, that's like also, just like very cool, like cool color. Like, and I do appreciate that there's pop artists who understand the importance of that. But I think they're smart because I think they see that like if somebody's gonna buy the record, like, are you really gonna buy like a huge pop star's record on just like black, not 180 gram vinyl, like the lowest quality possible? Like, no, back in the day, they used to sell like two versions of a lot of albums. You'd have the high quality, like heavier version, and then they would just have like the basic version, and they were at different price points. And that just shows you how far like the industry's come down. Like, imagine if an MP3 costs less than a wave. Like if like you paid more to download a higher quality version of the song.
Yeah.
But people aren't downloading songs because what are you going to download it to? Why would you download a song?
But I have seen that before too. Like, you might have to pull your mic up. But I've seen some of these platforms that say you can pay for a higher quality.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. It exists, but like, how many people are probably really buying that?
Yeah, I wasn't.
I wish I could I wish I had that kind of data just sort of readily available, just because I think that's interesting. And that actually goes to like your question before of how do you, see the future? How do you predict the future? Is like kind of trying to explore all that stuff, like trying to think about, like, if you want to succeed in the music business or the industry, whatever you want to call it, like, you have to follow the industry. You have to be aware of the industry. You can't just be focused on yourself and your brand, because that's really not, that's easy for most artists. Like, they, I don't personally find it that easy. I find it very difficult to like, kind of like decide like, well, what's my brand? You know what I mean? Like, that's hard to me. But for some people, it seems to come super naturally. Like, they already know like ahead of time, like, this is how I want to be viewed. This is who I am. Like, I know who I am. Like, like my music's about this aspect of myself. Like, it's, it's very like everything's all like, it all serves, the greater good, like the brand, like the person, I find that personally a little bit more difficult. But like, I don't hold that, I don't mean that in like a disparage, or like, I don't mean that to be like an insult to anybody who does that, because I'm envious of people who just like know their brand right off the bat. The first time I ever met with a publicist, and they're like, so what's your brand? Like, what's your story? And we're like on a whiteboard. I'm like, I don't know. Like what would be 5 words to describe you? I'm like, I never even thought that, but if you're aware of that stuff, and that's all like industry talk, you can I think you can kind of see where the future is going to go based on just following the industry itself, like always knowing where it's going, knowing that if you know that there's a website that offers a higher price point for higher quality, download FLAC or whatever the lossless like audio format is that they're selling. If you know that, then like, and that's important to you, then like you should just follow that trend, right, and make sure that your music is like as high fidelity as you want it to be, and making sure that the sound of your record is the important thing to you.
Yeah. So I feel like the topic for this conversation today has been how technology is kind of like disrupting the music industry, and I want to take that a step further. Have you heard of Google releasing an AI songwriting software?
I've heard of it. I haven't is it out now?
So they did release like examples of it, and I can't play an example like on this. I should have showed you it before, but I can't play it on this, but I'll explain what it did. So everybody says the examples were impressive. I think otherwise, but here you go. They were 30-second snippets of what sounds like actual songs created from a paragraph-long description that prescribes a genre, vibe, and even specific instruments, as well as 5-minute-long pieces generated from 1 or 2 words like melodic techno, and some of them have favorite demo modes, which is like story mode, where the model is basically given a script to morph between prompts. So it's like they can change the style of music within the prompt that they were given.
Okay.
So one of the prompts that they were given was from 0 to 15 seconds. They were supposed to have an electric song played in a video game. So it would sound like a song played in a video game.
Okay.
For the next 15 seconds, it would switch to a meditation song next to a river. So, and the next 15 seconds after that, the prompt was just fire. Okay. And then after that, the prompt was fireworks. So in the song, it transitioned from each of those to like that. It sounded like, I want to say it sounded like somebody who's just starting to make music.
Okay.
Was producing it, but it did sound, if you weren't a musician, I don't think that you would know that.
Now, is it, I know you said you didn't care for it. Is it better songwriting than it is production?
So they didn't use any lyrics.
Okay.
It was only production. And I can personally say that I wouldn't be able to do that as a producer.
Like you wouldn't be able to achieve it, or you wouldn't.
I wouldn't be able to achieve what the AI did. And I've produced some songs before.
So you're saying the production was good.
The production was good enough that some musicians might not be able to achieve that level.
Yeah.
What do you think about AI and music? Do you think that it's going to be bad, or is it all dependent on how people use it?
I mean, what's the difference between like lip syncing at the Super Bowl versus like an AI song to some degree, right? Like I feel like there's already been enough, I used to hate autotune. I used to think it was really stupid. And I don't see the point in it for most music. But when people use it as like an effect, I think that's awesome. But like that, that changed from a technology standpoint. When that came out, I mean, that changed a lot of music. Right? Like it made it so you didn't actually have to be good at singing to do it. So that still allowed people to create good art, who otherwise might not have ever had a chance to, because maybe a record label would have been like, dude, you sing way too off key. Like the song's good, but you need a new singer. So I don't mind when technology helps to advance art or help to create it, right? Because there's been a lot of that over the last 100 years. Look at the synthesizer. Look at the sampler. How much music exists, great music exists because of advancements in technology. AI, I mean, I don't love the idea of AI, I don't think AI could do what I do. Like, I don't think AI, I think the day I would really have a problem with AI writing music or think that it has like a detrimental effect would be like the day that like it really it just makes something that I've already made, based on prompts. Because then I think it takes the human, right? Like if you could give it the right set of prompts and the right parameters, and then it made a song that already existed, you'd be like, oh, right? Like it's like now it's doing what humans can do. I think AI, at least now, I know like there's debate about whether or not it's, is it good, is it bad? I don't think it's all that advanced. You know, like I think AI is kind of stupid. I think that it just like it does what you want it to do, right? Like you give it parameters, you tell it how to respond to different parameters that you're going to give it after the fact, and then it works in those confines. You know, it's not actually thinking on its own. You know, it's like you have to. It's like when people are having conversations with like AI and they're like, oh, the AI said this, that, and the other. It said it because you programmed it to. Yeah. You gave it things that it could say. You gave it rules for how to respond to certain things. Like it doesn't have free will, right? Like, and so I don't know. I welcome the competition, you know, like I'd love to like see who could make like a better song, but then it becomes subjective, you know, and if an AI song is good, it's good. You know, if I hear an AI song and it's got like a great beat and it just works for me, I don't think I'd really care. I mean, did you see the South Park episode that's written by ChatGPT?
No.
It's awesome. It's great.
I had no idea they did that.
They made an episode that's written by ChatGPT. Yeah, check it out.
Great.
And it's
oh man.
Yeah.
Did they animate it themselves? Or?
Yeah, they animated it.
Okay.
But the script is all written by ChatGPT.
Oh man. Okay.
And it works.
I'm definitely gonna
you know,
check
and
that
so
out.
it's like and it's not like it's an episode. I mean, you know, I don't know what the intent of you know Trey Parker and Matt Stone is, but it's not an episode that like it's not. I don't know if it's necessarily for or against, you know, AI, yeah, and it worked. The episode works. It lands. You know, it makes the same kind of like statements that like other South Park episodes make. You know, like kind of like, you know, their take on things, and it works. So I don't really know. I'm curious. I want to hear. I'm going to listen to the Google AI song. I'm curious what it sounds like. You know, because I think it could be cool. I think you could probably, if it worked well enough, you could probably just come up with some bizarre set of parameters or instructions or whatever they're called, put it in, get a song back, and then, you know, write lyrics and a melody on top of it. And then you're collaborating with AI, you know, like, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. I personally find it hard to believe that AI will make art as good as other people, you know, only because they might be able to make art that you can't tell wasn't made by a person, but there's so much bad art out there that it's like, you know, what's the difference? You know what I mean? Is it better than bad art? Is it on par with bad art? Is it better than good art? Is it, you know what I mean? It's like, it becomes so subjective that it's like, you know, if it wrote, I'm trying to think of like a song that everybody hates. It's not even a bad.
Friday.
I was just gonna say Rebecca Black, and I was gonna add the caveat that it's like not even like the worst song I've ever heard, but everybody I think universally hates it. It's not the worst song, but everybody just is like hates that song, right? It goes down in history as just one of those hit songs that everybody hates,
especially when it's not even Friday and you're listening to it on a Tuesday.
Right? It was so popular. Remember how popular it was? And I'll probably get a lot of like grief for it. Like I never liked the song Gangnam Style, even though I know like everybody loved it. Or Party Rock. I wasn't like, I mean, those songs just seem so silly to me. Those songs to me, that's what I imagine an AI song would sound like, you know? It would do something like that. And then you just have to ask, like, is it better or worse? And then does it matter, you know? Like, I think AI feels very scary, right? Like, it feels scary because it's unknown and because everything that happens in movies comes to be in real life at some point, or at least it feels that way. Like, it's hard to not believe that like Google's going to go from writing a crappy song to like being Skynet and like destroying the earth in a nuclear war. You know, it's like, it's hard to not worry that like robots are going to take over the world. And I think it says more about us than it does maybe about the actual technology, because number one, we program it, but it is easy to believe that, you know, because like it's easy for a human to look around the earth and be like, there's so many problems on earth caused by humans. It's easy to understand that if you gave, you know, that iRobot thing, right? That if you gave like a AI the ability to make decisions and like do what's best for humans, that it's plausible in the human mind that they would be like, oh, humans are the problem, you know? So like that kind of like scary aspect of artificial intelligence, I think is kind of ingrained in us from science fiction movies and just like what we feel, how we feel about ourselves. and the fact that we're in control of AI. So if we're in control of it and we are also a negative force on the planet, then like it's easy to believe that AI would be a negative force on the planet. I guess I would be more concerned, about AI doing stuff other than songwriting. I think it's funny. I think it's like I said, the South Park episode really like did it for me. So I'm kind of like interested in what AI has to like, can offer in an artistic way. But it will definitely put people out of business in certain art forms for sure. It'll definitely like it replace, because if AI songs are decent enough, it just wipes out that low level of songwriters who aren't that great.
Yeah.
If all of a sudden AI songs are better than what you make, then you don't, you know what I mean? It's like we don't need you putting songs out there. But art is very self-centered, I think, by its nature. So people are always gonna just put out,
Yeah, I think people are just scared that it'll actually get to the point where the AI is going to be writing music way better than any musician can actually write it. Like there's an anime called Carol and Tuesday where AI music is a thing, and it says 99% of music, of the top music today, is written by AI, and people don't even know. So it's just the fact that it can transition from whoever is actually musically talented is successful in the music industry to whoever is technologically talented would be successful in the music industry, or even who can create the best prompt.
Well, I mean, I think it's natural to be worried about that because like the way that AI companies try to sell themselves to like make money is that like, it can do so much and more and it's going to become like so much better, right? Like they make it, they have an interest in you believing that AI can do more than it can, right? But if you read about it, like AI it really can't do that much. It can't, I mean, even take for example, like, your Google device or like an Alexa, right? Like the things that it can do that your voice prompts it to do, there's things it can't do that I'm just always surprised by, right? Like I feel like if I'm like, what was that thing I was just looking up the other day? I feel like I should be able to say like, okay, Google, what were my last 10 searches? Mm-hmm. And it should be able to just look, like it has that information. It's in my history. It's on my phone, right? But it can't do that because it's not what it's prompted to do, right? It's not programmed to do that. So I think that while it seems smart, it's like, it's really not. It's kind of like, it's just like a voice activation software. Like that's like been around for so long, and I would say that like the best example of AI, in terms of like a product that people have paid for would be like smart devices like that, that have voice command. And then after that, you have like, maybe the next most proven thing would be like ChatGPT or some of these AI filters. But like the AI filters don't really do, like some people post them and you only see the ones that are like really great. But how many people post like, look what AI did to me? And it's like, it's funny because it's so absurd. It's like, it's changed their race, and like, or like, changed their eye color. And like, it's like where you would think like, okay, if this thing's so smart and it's so good, like how could it have like so many, like how could it be botched on so many occasions?
Yeah, why can't it do better?
Yeah, why can't it do better? And it's like, because it's people programming it. AI is just people right now. I don't think there's actually any intelligence to it, and I don't think it's artificial intelligence. I think it's like it's misnamed because it's like if it could do what they say it can do, and if it could do what they say it will be able to do, then yeah. But like the idea of it being sentient, of if you did a bad job, so right, AI on principle should technically be the same like all across the board, right? Like Wi-Fi is the same on every device, right? Like it's Wi-Fi signal, Wi-Fi technology is the same. Now, there's better AI than others, better AI software than other AI. And that's just because the people programmed it better. They gave it more references, right? If you're going to ask it to write a song and you say, okay, AI, like whatever the software is, AI, Google songwriting software, like I want a song that's post-punk, that has like Afrobeat, that has bizarre lyrics that are inspired by 1980s televangelists. And, you know, is it going to make the Talking Heads record Remain in Light? And like, if it doesn't, it's like, is that a failure of the software to put together all of those prompts? Or did the developer not put that album into its whatever that aspect of it is? You know what I mean? Like I would imagine that for the music software, and I'm not, you know, I have a friend who could probably like talk about AI in music because he's a genius like programmer. Like he could probably have like discuss it way better and probably has a way better understanding. But like my rudimentary understanding of it would be that you have to put references in. Mm-hmm. You know, you have to, because if you say I want it to be this style of music, I would imagine that the more references you put into the software, the better it's going to do. This thing keeps coming down. You know what I mean? Like I would venture to say that that the best version of that would be the one that has the most references.
Yeah.
You know, so that your descriptive words can draw that style out of it. Yeah. But if you've made no distinction between, you know, post-punk and hardcore and all the different subgenres that exist there, the word punk might just make it come out like sounding like Avril Lavigne if that's the only reference you put in it, if you called that punk. You know what I mean? So I think it's, again, I'd be very interested in hearing the song and just kind of knowing more about how it works, you know, like how many references they put in to allow for that. Because the more I would just imagine the more references in, the better the outcome. Because I think that's true of a human who makes music, right? Is the more different styles you know, the more interesting like probably your music's going to be. If you only know folk music, like you're only going to ever make folk music, right? Like you're not. Yeah. You're not going to incorporate some new element that makes your folk music stand out. You're just going to only make basic folk music for whatever, you know, you want to call that.
Yeah. It's almost as if AI is becoming an instrument.
Oh yeah.
And the problem that I see with that is that I understand like you can have all these different guitar manufacturers or all these different drum manufacturers, and some are better than others. But when it comes to this AI thing, you're not the one plugging in the notes on the guitar. So like somebody can play the same note as somebody else on different guitars, and they might sound slightly different. But if somebody plugs in one prompt on one AI and does it in another AI, they might sound worlds apart.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like almost you can't even, it's almost like each AI is a different instrument in itself. Like one AI can be based in all hip hop sounds. One AI can be based in all folk sounds, like you said, or one AI could be, well, they wouldn't be based in all those sounds, but maybe primarily, and they weigh heavily on that.
Yeah.
So it's crazy how the music industry is going to change, and even this guess that we're making right now could not be right.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's entirely possible that AI stalls out as like, you know, like the idea that everybody's really like up on it right now, and a lot of that's PR because AI companies also have publicists, right? And they just are constantly trying to get stories out there about how awesome their products are. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that could just fizzle out. You know, these companies, I would venture to guess that a lot of those companies are not going to be able to deliver on what they say they're doing or what they'll be able to do. I don't think they're going to be able to. I personally would be shocked. I'll eat this Vancouver Grizzlies hat, the entire hat. I'll eat it if AI replaces like songwriters, you know, because I do think that the human element is more important in certain pieces of art than others, you know. If AI can make, you know, the song Friday, like, it doesn't matter.
If
right?
AI makes the song Friday, we have to turn it off.
Right.
We have to turn it off.
But if it does that, like, that's fine by me. You know what I mean? I don't like, because it's like that song's just not speaking to me. So it's like I guess my point is that it's like not every artist speaks to every fan or every, every person who experiences that art. So if all of, I guess it would be wild if AI just started making music and was able to make all the different genres and appeal to everybody, and like make it in a way that it's like everybody's just like, wow, this is really good. Like I don't need to but do you really think like AI could like do what Kendrick Lamar does?
That's a good point.
I think that there's just certain things that humans can do better than a computer programmed by a human who can't do what another human can do. You know what I mean? It's like, because the guy who's programming that AI, like, it's not Kendrick Lamar. He's not sitting there programming it, right? Like, he's not showing that AI how he does what he does. And I don't think that an AI could ever do something like that. I don't think, and to some degree, I used to be against a lot of forms of like technology in audio production, right? Like, I really wasn't a fan of digital, plugin, like amp plugins. And now they're so good that it's like, well, it sounds good sometimes. Like, I don't use it all the time. I have amps all around here that like I love the way they sound, and when I want that sound, I use that amp. But I have plugins for amps that I don't own, and they sound good. And if it sounds good, I'm going to use it. Like I have a lot of synth software that's modeled after iconic synths from the 80s and, and even older. And I don't have $30,000 to buy an emulator. Like I don't have $30,000 to buy a CS80, but I have the plugin and it sounds awesome. Does it sound like the original? I'll never know. Unless I like win the lottery, you know what I mean? Or like I get 1 billion streams on Spotify, I'm probably never going to play those instruments in real life. If I ever saw one, if you have one, I'll come to your house and play and like be like super happy to like finally get to do that. And hear it like right there. But, we're saying like with AI, like, it's hard to tell the difference but on that song versus a song that a person wrote. And I think that with the way that technology has been going for a long time and is currently at in recording software, I think that there's a lot in there that I don't think you'd be able to tell the difference, without actually comparing, the original thing that it's modeled after to the digital version. And then again, like that just becomes like a matter of like financial means as like the gatekeeper to keeping you from using that nicer piece of gear. But if I could spend $600 and get 12 awesome synthesizers that are like officially licensed, that are supposed to sound like the real thing, I don't think I could tell the difference. I don't think a lot of people could tell the difference. And if I use it in a way that's effective, that gets my point across, like gets like the vibe across that I want to get across and allows me to like say the lyrics that I want to say to get a point across about a subject, then like it works, and that's not artificial intelligence, but I'm sure that to some degree there was probably some automated technological aspect that helped the engineers build that software, and I think a lot of people are using that type of software to make incredible music, so I used to be more adverse to certain forms of technology and music, but now I lean into them because it just, do I have the time or resources to compare every possible like piece of gear? No. And does it matter at the end of the day? Probably not. Maybe somebody out there thinks that like if you don't record everything through, this type of interface with this type of outboard gear with these specific plugins and this mixer, like, there are snobs out there who would believe that like you can't make something sound good. But I'll bet you if you did like one of those like blind tests on them, they probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference, even if they said they would. Like when they do those tests where they're like, they put 5 different vodkas in front of you and you don't know which one is the high end and which one's the Costco brand, and the connoisseur can't tell the difference. It doesn't matter, right? Like, cause I've heard horribly recorded music. Like I've heard songs that are recorded terribly that like could move me to tears because they're so beautiful. It's like, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't think that I don't think that that's as important as people think it is. When it comes to making a song, if you just have songs that you wrote that you want people to hear, I just think like you just have to record them by any means necessary, and get them out there, with whatever resources you have. If you don't have a lot of money, then just record your awesome songs in the best way you can, and just put them out yourself, and they're out there in the world, because like we've been talking about this entire time, like even when you have the money and you have the nepotism and you have every opportunity in the world, it still doesn't guarantee your success. So at the end of the day, you just have to ask yourself, like, what do I make art for? And if you only make art for money, then like I don't really, there's nothing, there's not really any solid advice outside of spend more money. And if you make art because you have to, because it's for your own mental health, then like you just have to make it. Like I make music because it makes me feel good, Like if I made music for money, like I probably would have given up by now, or just kept trying. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to tell, but like I don't make music to make money because I know how hard that is. So I'm like realistic about it. You manage your expectations, and and just if you make the best art you can make, then like you don't really have to worry about AI, because I really do feel like it can't replace the greatest artists. I don't think it could do what the greatest artists have done. I don't think it could write a symphony, that's 15 minutes long. Like maybe one day it can. And half the people, most of the people who hear most music don't like it, right? Like if you like look at how many fans like any one artist has versus how many people there are on earth, and it's like most people don't like your music. The vast majority of people don't like your music, even if you're the biggest artist on the planet. So, I don't know. I think you can lean into technology to help make art for sure, because like where do you draw the line? You know what I mean? It becomes like a personal thing. Like what's okay? Like what level of automation is okay? Like is it okay, to have like a crane in a movie bring your shot in using like a digital controller, or like are you a purist and you're like, no, somebody has to be moving the crane like they did 80 years ago, like what, like I was just talking to my friend last night when we were having a mix session about flying faders, which was, without being really boring, flying faders was just like a software, a computer that's been around for decades now, I don't know, 30, 40 years maybe. And it allowed you to automate your mixes and save them. Whereas for a long time, if you wanted this sound to come up in just one part, you had to, in your final, mix down, you had to manually turn it up and turn it back down. Flying faders came in and it made it so that audio engineers could just move them around during the mix, save it, and then it would just automatically move the board when you were doing it. And it allowed you to use amazing old analog gear, but technology allowed you to do something you could never do with it before, that saved time so you have more time to focus on making art, and allowed you to do cooler things that you weren't able to do before unless you had 20 people in the room to move all the knobs. You can automate so much in music now, and nobody ever complains about that because it's a piece of technology that's advanced music, And again, the synthesizers, right? Like there's so much, drum machines, like how much, if they didn't come up with a drum machine in the 60s, like there'd be no hip hop as we know it today. Hip hop would be completely different. It might just all be live musicians playing those rhythms. Might not be at all, So
Man, what if there were no drum machines? Wow, no Jay Dilla.
Right? Like the drum machine,
that's
the drum
a terrible
machine,
thought.
the drum
That's a
machine
terrible
and the
thought.
synthesizer are two of the most like important inventions for music, and they've been around for a long time. They've been around longer than people. It took decades for people to know how to use them to make effective music. Like some of the people who use synthesizers at the beginning, like in like the late 60s and the 70s, they used it completely different. Some of that music is still as popular today as it ever was, like classic rock bands who started using synthesizers, experimental artists who started using synthesizers in the 70s, which turned into like, an explosion of synths in the 80s, and then the 90s is really like music has been becoming more digital for the last 60 years. But it took a long time for people, in my opinion, it took a long time for people to become really effective at it. I like some of the experimental, like early, electronic music, because I think it's just fascinating. And like, it must, like, imagine it's like 1968 and you hear like some crazy synthesizer for the first time, and like, it probably sounded like music from outer space, There's a video of Roxy Music playing on the Tin Whistle show. It was probably like 1971 or two or something, like before Brian Eno did his first like solo record, and he's got like this crazy, like analog synth up on the stage with him, and I just imagine like somebody flipping around the channels in like London, back in like the early 70s, and like seeing this guy like making these crazy sounds that nobody ever heard before, and it probably just felt like aliens landed from outer space and like had this new instrument. And 15 years later, like, I mean, look, the 1980s, like music, like without synthesizers, I mean, how much amazing music wouldn't exist in the 80s? And think about how many people in the 80s were probably like, keyboards, synthesizers, like drum machines, what? Like, that's going to destroy music. Like, music is guitars and basses and drums and pianos and violins and like...
Yeah, imagine what Beethoven would have said.
Right, yeah. Beethoven would have been like some like snotty fucking guy on Twitter being like, what is this? Like, what do you mean? Like, no, you need 100 people in the room to play 100 different violins, and like, it's like, no, you could just like hit this one thing and it does it for you. And it saves you time, and so you can make more art, I mean, I don't think there's any denying that there's way more art today than there ever was before. Making art is so much easier and more accessible than, 150 years ago. I don't think like the average farmer's kid like came home from like tilling the fields to like jump on a computer and make some like, lo-fi hip hop beats. Like, you know what I mean? It's like you worked and you went to church and you ate food and you died. Usually young and poor, and like kind of like an artist now. You're basically an artist now. It's like they were artists without making art. That's what it was. You just worked all day until you died, and usually poor. So, but yeah, I think technology. I think AI will. Like you said it before. You said AI is like an instrument, and I think that'll be the ultimate. If I had to predict, that would be the ultimate realization of AI in art, would be that it becomes a tool. You know what I mean? That you use it, not that it replaces you, but that you use it to be like, I can't figure out like this part. Like, let's see what AI comes up with.
Yeah, AI should be a music assistant, not a music creator.
I would rather see AI touch all the buttons for me. I'd rather, you know what I mean? If I had to say what I wanted AI to do for me in a recording studio, it would be like a little robot that plugs in all the microphones. You know what I mean? It would be like, I'd be like, hey, okay, Google, like plug in my microphone. Oh, okay. Okay, Google, turn the input down like 3 decibels. Like, that's what I would love to have AI do for me, is like just touch the buttons for like saving, like, so I can just walk around the room and be more focused on like the music being made than the like setup. That's I would love that. Like, that's what I think AI would be better if that was what it was. But these companies seem to at least paint themselves to be like a way to replace humans in some degree, which I don't understand why that would be what you want.
Yeah. Well, we've been going for a long time.
Yeah.
We're a little. Yeah, I'm gonna have a lot of fun editing this. We're a little over the time limit, but yeah, AI
just do the
definitely
extra
needs
stuff
to
on
take a
your
step back.
OnlyFans. The extra content paid only on your OnlyFans.
Only on OF, guys. But thank you for sitting down and
Yeah.
having this conversation. A lot of AI talk, which was unexpected, but definitely needed given the times that we're in. And
you should cut out all the parts where we talk bad about AI, because in the future, if AI does take over and they
it's
come
gonna
across
find
this,
us.
they're gonna
just know we were kidding.
Yeah, we're just kidding. AI is awesome.
So is there anything else you want to tell the people before we get out of here? Want to give them your handles?
What are my handles? Check out A Secret Recording Studio, at A Secret Recording Studio on Instagram. My band at Modern Teeth on Instagram. And yeah, aside from that, just be nice to each other.
Yeah. Go home and love your family.
Everybody be nice.
Okay, let's get out of here. See you guys.